never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, here for TLT round 14. A lot of SuperCoach talk this week. We have Mikey back on board after a couple of weeks break. Mikey, first of all, did your big buy round go well, and also your mini big buy round? How'd that go?
Yeah, good to be back on. Sorry, I know work's made it really hard for me to get on. Been a bit crook too last week. But yeah, like a bit of a yo-yo. I had a really good patch. My big buy round, which I planned pretty well for. I ended up, my numbers got strike down pretty fast, but I had a pretty good round, moved up like 7,000 spots, but had a horrible round, just going probably my worst round of the year, and I think it couldn't get much worse. But I was flawed. I had a lot of guys that were on the buy already, and on top of that, my worst trade in the year, Cola, just hurt me by getting selected. Then HIA'd. Ola Kawatu got rested. Like others, you know, I copped Hynes, Kiraz. So I was down to 17 after making 2 trades. I guess the good thing from it, which kind of worked out in a sense, I was going to trade for Longo to Walsh. I would have done it. I'm not saying the Walsh is a bad move, but I'm very happy with the hold. He's got 2 more games at Melbourne. Looks like he's picked up the goals, so kind of worked out for me in that sense. And yeah, like look, tough round, but I've got a lot of the strength back this week, and looking forward, I do like the shape of my side. I think it's getting hard. 15 for me was always the buyer flagged as the most challenging, but from here the mini buys get pretty easy depending on who you pick up. Like obviously if you go heavy on Broncos and Parrots, gonna get could get a bit hard, but 13 was definitely the hardest one, just based off the teams that were missing.
Well, it's a really hard time of year, as we know, because of Origin and because of these buys that we're talking about. But it is also difficult because now's the point where you normally do start to get more injuries, and it has happened because the grind of the season starts to take its toll and everything else, and guys obviously get rested or hurt playing representative football too. And we now have guys like Alex Twal, who is now out 4 to 6 weeks as of today, and Kiraz now in doubt with a calf injury. Both these guys been popular buys. Kiraz the last couple of weeks, and then 12 the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks. I've done both, and I thought I was ahead of the curve a little bit on both, and now I'm absolutely screwed. And it's very hard, and sometimes it's very unlucky. So from round 15, I have probably only got 12 to 13, if I'm lucky, with all my trades being used. And that's just goes to show how difficult it can be to juggle this period. Some of that as well as other guys that are out too, like Nicho, Hynes and stuff. And we're going to get to that. So I guess with the strategy talk, Mikey, which we'll start off with this, I think the teams need to be trading this week, obviously, for that big buy round. And they also need to be careful of the round 16 as well. And there is, if you think that you're down on numbers, I think part of your strategy should be get round 15 and 18 guys if you can, which is something that I've looked at. It is difficult to do, but the way SuperCoach is structured now, as far as the website and the app, it's made it really easy. You can just search for guys that play round 15 and 18 and try and prioritise some of those top scoring guys. Because as we've seen in round 15, if you're going to be short in round 15, a little bit like I am, I definitely don't want to be in round 18. So that could be the deal breaker, I think, that people need to use if they're choosing between guys this week.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I've kind of been trying to focus on, is get guys that'll give you the next 2. Like I look at that last buy round, my numbers are pretty good now, but I had like 17 like the week before for the first buy, and that got shot down to 14. So it just shows that from now, like, you know, depending on what happens, there could be mass changes in the Origin side. If we go in 1-1, say the Blues get flogged, they could make some mass changes and you lose guys you're counting on for numbers. So more so, that's why I would prefer to get the extra guy, unless, for example, say Mark Tawazi come back and I wasn't scared he was going to go into the Origin arena. He's someone that I could grab and hold on to, where someone that plays 15 and 18, I might not want to grab him and hold on to him. And that's what I'm finding tricky. It is hard to buy some of these guys because I've saved probably 1 trade. So my trades are horrible. So not only do I need numbers, but realistically, the guys I'm bringing in, I don't know if I'll be able to get them back. Like, that's why, back onto strategy, I haven't really been selling any guns. I sold one. I sold Tedesco for Drinky before the buy, which, might seem crazy, but now I didn't lose 80K this week. A lot of people looking at selling. If I had Tedesco now, I wouldn't have sold him. But the fact I sold him before he lost all that money and managed to get a captainable Drinky score, that move makes sense. But because I've sold a guy like him now low on trades, it means I'm holding Cleary. I'm holding Hynes. I can't afford to do any more of that. I've used my one in my eyes. So,
there's not enough people that are doing that. Like, that was going to be my next point to wrap up the strategy chat as well. You've got to really consider guys that you're bringing in. If they're not going to be a keeper, then are you really going to spend 2 trades on that guy because you're going to trade them back out again later? And 2, like you said, if you're going to trade out a keeper, Cleary being a prime example last week, which some people traded out, how are you going to get him back in? 1 is the trade cost, which you mentioned, and 2 is also the financial cost, because you can say, it's going to cost me 2 trades, but I've got the trades. But do you have 3? Because if Nathan Cleary is 800 to 900,000, it is highly unlikely you're going to be able to go a 1-for-1 trade to get that to happen. And then all of a sudden you're using 2 trades to get him back in. And that's when it becomes a really slippery slope with your trade numbers, doesn't it? Because most teams, I think, have been hammered this year and have used a lot of trades. And unfortunately, what that means is that you've got to bite the bullet, I think, as a strategy and go, you know what? I'm going to take a hit this week on points. Maybe I score 50 points less this round, 100 points less this round. But I just can't afford it in the long run to trade out a Nathan Cleary. The flip side is, Mikey, that those sides that have got 25 plus trades, you now have a massive advantage. Go trade Tedesco, trade the Cleary, trade these guys and get them back later. That's fine. But that is not the majority, and I don't think it's the majority of people that are making these sort of trades. I reckon that there's going to be some teams on the run home might regret some of these moves.
That's why I think it's key not only with that, but to be grabbing depth as you do it. Because, not holding nuffs and all this kind of things, it's going to give you depth when you go through those tough rounds. But like you said, Cleary and Hynes will be very hard to get back because 936, 875, and with the way they're playing, I don't think they're going to drop, they might drop 50 to 100K if they have a couple here, but they're going to hover around that price. And, when you see because obviously if you go down, you're going to make a bit of money in there. You see that big money in there and you're going to look to upgrade and use that money. It's very hard to go, I'm going to stash away that money. Because if you're making a move like that, you want to utilize that money to strengthen your team elsewhere to make that move worth it. So I think that is definitely the key with that part. And like I was saying before, it's important to, if you can, look to grab these guys that play too, because if you're really low on trades, I think a lot of us that are struggling for this round, you've got to use your trades to get numbers for the next buy. But then from 15 to 18 will be the period where you've got to try and save it. I'm looking at it like that. Just get 13 guys on the park. It doesn't matter. Try and get 13 if I can. And then after that, same for the next buy round. Don't try and go big. Just keep trying to float, but have quality of the numbers in there. And then from 15 to 18, if I can make 4 or 5 trades, I can make that back run. But I think if you have anything less than 10 trades after the last mini buy round, I'd be a little bit nervous. And I'm looking at my numbers, and that means I've only got really, after this week, 5 or 6 to play with. So I think you've got to have, anything less than 10, I'd be panicking because...
10 for the run home, you mean? Like after
after 19. So I'm saying going into 20, if I see anything less than 10 in there, which is very possible to go under that number, I'd be scared. I personally would like 12, but looking at where my team's at, but that's what makes it hard. Like, this is where I find these few rounds are very hard because right now, like you said, I've got to make 2 trades to get my numbers for next week. But that second trade, there's no one I really like. Like, I'm looking at these, like center wing's a spot I can fit one, but I don't like this. Some good plays, but are they good plays that I'm willing to hold them for the rest of the year, knowing these guys can dish a 10? We'll get into it when we talk about trades, but that's what's hard. And I'm feeling second row is very hard as well because I've got a bunch of these guys with coverage and, your Couchmans and Lasardis that have turned into keepers, but it's making it hard for me personally to get guys like Kai Pearce-Paul where I feel like I need them. So this is the other hard part with the strategy is working out who to sell. I jumped off Lukey a little bit too early and he keeps burning me, so I don't want to make the same mistake at getting rid of like a guy like Lasardi and that, but that stuff will cover in the usual market watch, I'm sure.
It's a very hard period. And the last point that we'll make on strategy before we move on is it's a massive opportunity for those teams that are patient and do take a hit and hold these players, because it's not just the points on the run home that you're looking at over guys, teams that don't, end up getting back a Cleary or a Tedesco or whatever because they can't afford to. It's also the delay. And this is the important thing to remember. If you're going to sell these guys like a Tedesco, a Hynes, a Cleary and so forth, the top elite guys, then how quickly are you going to get them back and what games are you going to miss? Because, Hynes is notorious for coming back from injury and throwing up 100. He's thrown up 140, 150 before. I think there was a Dragons game, actually, that he put 160 up when he first came back from injury, maybe last year at the start of the season. These guys have that ability, and you can't just run that gauntlet and expect not to get burnt a lot of the time. And it will happen. One of these guys will come back, and possibly even Tedesco this week against the Raiders, who he loves to play, which we're going to get to now. He could throw up 150. If you lose 150 points there, or I say 100 because your guy that you bring in scores 50, and you do it, and you've done the trade to make up what ends up being 55 points in the bye round, you're still behind. And then the next game after Origin's finished, can you get him back straight away, or do you have to wait 2 weeks and build your bank up and your trades? Do you have other problems that you've got to solve? It puts you so behind the 8 ball. So I would urge everybody, as much as they can, to try and navigate holding the top elite talent that you have in your SuperCoach team as much as you can do without getting them out at this point. Let's talk Market Watch, though. Before we do, I'm just going to mention the great sponsor of the NRL Allstars podcast, One World Courier. Go to oneworldcourier.com.au today and you can check them out and sign up for a free account. They are a West Tigers jersey sponsor at the moment. You'll see it written across there. Paul CEO is a mad Tigers fan, but he loves footy. Played footy with him myself for a few years, and he absolutely loves it. So, you can see it with the Tigers giveaways that they're doing at the moment at One World Courier. If you're a Tigers fan, you just got to go check it out for the giveaways. They're giving away free corporate box games and all this type of stuff as well. But if you've got a business, or you own a business, or work for a business that has any type of freight, shipping, courier needs, One More Courier have got you covered. You sign up for a free account. It says, where did you hear about us? Put NRL All-Stars podcast. They'll take great care of you straight away. And put in what you want to send, where you want to send it to. It'll give you all the options of the carriers. You just pick the carrier that you want, and then they just take care of it all for you. It's really simple. Great service, and it's a fantastic company. So go and get on board, because they are also great supporters of SuperCoach and Rugby League, as well as this podcast. Mikey, Market Watch, traded out. There's a lot of guys hurt. Okay, we got Twal, we got Brayley, we got Paddy Carrigan, Nicho Hynes. It's Latrell Mitchell still going out along with Jacob Preston. It's the whole top 10. 8 of the 10 is like littered with guys that are hurt, right? I don't think we need to talk about those guys. I do think that guys like Setu Tu, Trey Mooney, even Lasardi, these guys are guys that aren't hurt, but can easily be traded out. And you're going to need to trade some of these guys out now. I want to concentrate on these keepers, particularly James Tedesco, who we sort of segued to. He's playing this week. Now, I understand the premise of getting rid of him. I agree with what you said earlier, though. It was much better to do it before, because you had the benefit of spending that money in a big buy round and a mini big buy round and
get a number out of it. Yeah, get a number out of it. And he
lost 80K, but he is still going to lose a hell of a lot more again, So there is an argument at 197 break even, he's going to lose another 100K this week. So I do understand, but here's the thing, right? He's going to miss round 15, but he's going to come out and play a later game against the Sharks, which he should be playing at Allianz Stadium, which is a good matchup. But I would be really concerned about this week. The last 3 rounds, the last 3 games, against the Raiders, Teddy's averaged over 100 points. And when you go through and look at those games, he's got 91 points last year in his lone game against the Raiders. You go back to 2024 and he's got 151 points and 104 points. Like, it's about 120 plus average when you look at it. And that's the last 3 games versus the Raiders, when the Raiders have been good and 2 out of those 3 have been at GIO Stadium. He has a historically good average against the Raiders at 81 points a game with a 151 high, which he's recently scored against them. The Raiders, surprisingly enough, are giving up the 3rd most points in the NRL at the moment. So this all says to me that Tedesco is actually a CVC option this week, and you're getting rid of a guy that has put on big scores and turned up 2 out of his last 3 games against the Raiders. To me, that's flirting with disaster. And I tend to think that when we talk about paying for points, if he ends up going 120 this week, he's still going to lose money. But do you really care about the 50K if you're getting those points out of him? And then in the big buy round, you've obviously got the ability to trade some other players out instead of him as well. And he should back up against the Sharkies. So I'm not saying it's the worst trade in the world. I just don't love it, and I think that you could get burned.
Yeah, look, you're going to need him back at some point, but I get why people are doing it. He misses 2 of the next 5, and that 197 scary. If you're on Barnesy and, the Raiders looked great last week, if they show up, to be honest, with Roosters without their 2 primary starting wingers, they don't look as good. If they dish up another crap game like they did on the weekend, I know Storm's a bogey side for him, but let's just say they have an average performance, and let's say Tedesco gives you an 80. He's going to miss his break even by 117. He's got 197 break even. And with the score of 91 is 83. What's the worst case? He dishes up another 50. If that happens, he'll lose like 120,000 with a humongous break even next week yet again. So I get the cause for panic and the thought for it. But in saying that, which is switch back to supporting, I guess, your decision. If you think he's if you hold him the whole season, he's going to make back what he loses. Especially, Roosters like to punish the weaker sides. The draw's mixed. But, look, if you want to sell him this week with that high break even though he's got a great average against Canberra. If you did want to get on the sell train, I'd probably do it this week. I'd do it this week rather than next week because, unless he comes out and scores 200, we know it's Tedesco, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a GIO as well, but I mean, that hasn't mattered to him.
But he scored 150
recently.
Last time he played a GIO. But I guess the only difference is Roosters looked bad last week. Raiders are looking a bit good. The Raiders are still missing plays, but I think when Hudson Young and Ethan Strange are in that side, they look like a total different side. And I think they lose a lot of strike power in their back line without those 2 guys. If Noang and Tawazi comes into the fold, which is a chance this week, be a different story. But I definitely 100% VC and C option.
I tell you though, people forget and the Roosters have played badly last couple of games, but prior to the last couple of games, they were on a 6-game winning streak and they were looking really good. I think that Storm game, aside from them being a bogey side and the Storm actually playing a lot better lately, is 3 out of their 4 spine players were backing up from Origin 48 hours before, and that's a big deal. You've got Sam Walker debuting in Origin, Tedesco playing Origin, Robson playing big minutes in the middle in Origin, backing up. That was tough. And yes, I know that Munster and Grant backed up, but the Roosters had an extra spine player that backed up as well. I just think that it was a perfect storm, and missing some of those players like the wingers does make an impact, and they're probably going to be missing this week. So it is a valid point, but you've also got to look at Tedesco could go, badly again. His last 2 scores are 48 and 21, which is horrible. But people forget very quickly in SuperCoach what's happened the weeks before that. And that was a 5-round average of 120 plus. He went 127, 84, 108, 162, and 84. 3 out of 5 tons, and the other 2 were 84 points each. That was a big scoring run, and he was killing it, and everyone wanted him in their side. I would say by law of averages, it's more likely to revert to that than it is to revert to what he's done the last 2 weeks. So I get why people are doing it. I agree with you. It is an option. It might work, but you've got to look at the downside of it as well. I'm going to hold Teddy. I just don't see the value in me getting rid of him with the trades that I have left. I think it's too hard, and I like the matchup this week.
I just think on that, too, Barnesy, quickly, one more thing is I reckon there's a good chance he gets rested. If you just keep losing, probably not, but I just think maybe after watching him play last week against a Storm, they do have games where they get a bit more rest, like after in 19 and 16, but I just feel like there's a good chance that one of those games, Robson might choose to rest if they're still in that top 4. It all obviously depends, and they've still got to play Penrith again, Melbourne again, who they don't have great records with, and they've got to play the Dolphins twice. So they've nights in there, their draw isn't amazing. But like you said, if you're low on trades, I think it's really not an option. If you've got a crap load of trades, go for it, because you're going to need to get him back.
Well, round 16, when they're playing the Sharks, it's the last game of the round at 6:15 p.m. on the Sunday. So I think that makes it a little bit easier.
Unless he chucks an Ivan Cleary.
And I mean, Saturday at 7:30 is the round 19 game that they have. So neither of them are too bad. as far as, the first Origin 2 backup's pretty much perfect. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they'll be able to afford to be honest. But we will see. What about Nicho Hynes? Because I've held him, and it's very ambiguous as to whether he is a chance next week to return or not. I've just felt like if he's any reasonable chance of returning next week, or even less than 50-50, I can't possibly sell him because he's going to be the main guy that you're going to want in your team for next week in a big buy round.
Yeah, and I think even if you have trades, you can't do it because, let's say, I reckon he won't play next week, but even if he doesn't, if he plays any of those buy rounds, he's a must-have. You need to grab him in. I know we don't throw that word around lightly on this podcast, but he's the kind of guy that you need for a podcast. Like when Tedesco's available, you got to grab him. There's guys that you must have in a buy round, and he's one of them. So if, let's say he misses a couple of weeks, comes back for that round 18 matchup, you're going to need him for then. So even if you sold him now, just to bring him back in a couple more weeks? And if, say, he comes right back on that 8 and he's got the 122 break even, it means he's going to stay at the same price that you have to get him back for. So, for me, even if he's out for me to sell him, it need to be 6 weeks plus. It's a week to week, and I don't care how long I have to hold him. I'm not interested in my halves are done. I've got Cleary, I've got Hynes. I don't want to change it. I copped no halfback last week because I'm like, it's just not worth selling them with the trades that I have. Even if you've got a crap load of trades, I'm just like, use those trades to make other moves unless they're both long-time injuries and they're going to be out on a week like this. You can't. But in a buy round, you can afford not to have one position not playing. You can't.
I mean, I think if I knew last week if he wasn't going to return until round 18 for sure, I would have happily sold him.
That's different, yeah. And if that's an extra week.
Yeah, and you've got then you know that you miss Dragons game, you're going to miss the Warriors game, the Roosters game, and then they've got to buy in round 17 anyway. Yeah. So round 18, you're getting back for that. But he's going to play at least one of the next 2 major buy rounds. So like you said, you have to have him in round 18, and I don't see any way he's not back for that at a minimum. So yeah, it's very hard to sell him. I want to talk about the trades in, though, because there is some real big trade-ins at the moment that are happening, and Terrel May is the number one.
Sorry, Barnesy, just before you get into Terrel May, there's another one on that top 10 that you'd normally pick up, Lasardi. Do you think Lasardi's a sell? Because it's a big talking point right now. 3,000 I sold him. If I was to get Kai Pearce, he'd be the guy that'd have to make way, but I can't get around selling him. I keep having a battle in my brain, but the issue with a guy like Lasardi is his base isn't bad at all. If the Storm start coming back and he's next to Hughes, that's what scares the crap out of me because a try and we've got 90 most weeks. So
he's a great hold. And his base is ridiculous. 61 base for an edge back row is elite. He has gone 60 plus in raw base every game this year except for one, which was 53. So he's a fantastic player to have all year. I think the problem with Lasardi for me is he's got 3 buys left.
It's a crazy part that you forget about the Storm. If you're holding a lot of Storm plays, it's really going to hurt you, which I've got a lot.
Yes, I mean, if you got Munster and Grant and Lasardi and Fa'alongo, that's gonna hurt quite a bit. So I think that's what really hurts him. And the other thing too is that Kai Pearce-Paul's not going to be any worse, but he's going to cover the next 2 rounds. And like you mentioned, it's kind of hard who to sell now, right? Because a lot of teams are full of guys that are going to be decent. So I do think that if you ranked all the second rowers that you're going to need for the run home, he could be one, but he could easily not be one, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm scared of. I'm just, after Lukey, I'm scared I'll sell him and the attacking stats will come back. But if you take your sample size for 3 games, if the attack doesn't come, I think at some point, Kai Pearce is going to be a must. So that's the battle I'm having in my head. I think the only guy I can get, because unless otherwise I'd be selling a guy like Lamelu. I'd rather sell him, but he's giving me 2 more buy rounds. I can't touch guys that are going to play. So the fact he doesn't cover any more buy rounds, I think I could, and after saying I don't think he's a sell, if I really want Kai Pearce, he's going to be my only way to get to him. So that's a tough call.
And I think that's the way to look at it. I think it's okay to sell if you need to, but don't sell him if you don't really need to. That's
if you think you really need a player and you need the numbers, he might be better than, let's say, taking a risk on a centre wing fly that's, can dish up a 10 or a 20. If you're getting a guy that's got good solid base to match him and you think you can match him with the attack, then I guess you can warrant a sell on someone like him.
He will have a game where he scores a double on the run home. Like that Dolphins game, that Titans game in round 19, you could see him at Amy Park going over for 2 and scoring 120 plus. So, I mean, there is those. But in fairness, when you look at the draw, it's not phenomenal for the Storm on the way home. They've got a lot of top 8 teams on that final third of the season, and they've got 2 byes from round 18. So it's not the greatest. And round 24, that's a pretty integral bye round for head-to-head players as well.
Yeah.
Terrel, mate, we started to talk about him, number 1 most traded in player. I really like it, but I will say I'm going to wait a week. So that's probably the only controversial thing I say. I'm not going to say don't get him. I reckon he's a great buy. I think people need to get him in. He's averaging 86 for this year. His minutes are back up. And the thing is, though, he's still got an 86 break even, right? So he's not going to change in price this week. And I dare say, I just don't think that he's going to score as well against a Panthers side as what he has been for the rest of the season so far.
I disagree. I think he'll score well against Penrith because it's a kind of game where I think the Tigers will go with him. All the other teams seem to be playing up against, like playing well and matching him. And it's like a bit of a grudge match. I've got some ex-players. Terrel got sacked from the Panthers. Not only that, Twal is out. Last year he was getting fed the minutes. I think with Twal out, could have a little bit of these minutes are going to maintain, or he could have a little bit of a spike. And he doesn't really have to do much to get a big score. So I think some people might go, let's wait for next week in case he gets picked for Origin. I'm almost certain he won't get picked for Origin. Shout out to Sabs in his podcast. He played an audio clip where he didn't even get a talking. Usually the Origin camp will hit him up and ask him how they're what they need to work on to get on that. He's got no calls from him whatsoever this year. So, which kind of tells you he's probably not in the frame. And you think if they were looking for another prop, they'd probably go up Jackson Ford's avenue. So, I think he's good this week. For some example, Reece Walsh is a guy, even though he's versing the Titans, I'll wait next week for him to guarantee I get him because I think he'll get picked on the 19-man this time round because they'll need some extra. They have to win. With a guy like Terrel, you can't wait for next week for all of them unless your numbers are good. So I guess Terrel's one that you can jump on now and, bank a safe 80. And I think the most popular trade in the front row this week would be Twal to Terrel, which makes sense. I'm grabbing Terrel. I'll be going from Paseka, who's been great, but I don't have Twal. So
yep.
That'll be
it's an easy trade to make. And I'm not saying it's a bad trade at all by saying, I'll wait till next week.
Yeah.
I just, and when I say, I don't think you'll score as well, I don't think you'll get 100. I think, you'll probably get 80, but I can live with that. I'm not sure that he's going to ton up against the Panthers. And I agree with you on the 12 minutes if he's getting less, but the fact is he's gone 80, 70 and 73 minutes the last 3 games. So he's already averaging 74 minutes across his last 3 anyway. So he can't really play anymore.
He got 64 minutes last week, then 80, 60, 60, one game with 80 and the one game was in 80. So the fact he scored 164, that's what I'm thinking. He'll go back to increased minutes on that.
You know what? I was just reading his base. I wasn't reading his minutes. I've been sick as the last couple of days myself, like you were last week. So everyone forgive me. Forgive my crap voice this week as well. Forgive me for reading out base instead of minutes. 64, 86. So you are right. So he probably will pick up.
Opportunity for more minutes. And even if he picks up that extra 10 minutes, that's an extra 10 points. So that's all I'm looking. He's a pretty safe C most weeks. And coming into 15 and 18, he's going to be the guy that you just captain.
Yeah. Look.
You need him.
He's a keeper. You got to get him. You have to have him for 15 and 18. I think whether you're getting him this week or next week, he's coming into most sides. I think that the issue now is as well, he's going to be 37 to 40% owned this week, which is a bit annoying, but it is how it is. A lot of people have got money to play with guys like Twal out now as well. So he's a great trade-in. And look, 3-round average of 87, 5-round of 91. He's been super consistent as well. And it's amazing how good the front row forward spot has been this season. Jacob Kiraz, there is talk that he is potentially not going to play this week. Calf injury. It's really annoying because he seems to always get hurt, but he's so good when he does it, and he's got the fullback jersey at the moment. I love him as a trade-in, but I've loved him as a trade-in for the last 2 weeks. I got him in the big buy round. A bit worried about his injury, but the fact that, he's got the pedigree and he was only 600k, went 109. Last week he had 7 offloads, scored a try again, absolutely killed it, 108 again. I dare say the Eels is his best matchup that he's going to have in his last few rounds. And this one against the Eels, I just feel like he's there for an easy ton if he plays, but I guess that's the problem, isn't it? We have to see that he plays. Are you worried about trading him in if he is coming in with that injury cloud, but he is playing? Because I guess that's the other question. You know, he is a guy that often gets hurt, like we said. He could go down during the game, but you're also getting him in for the one Eels game when he's a little bit under the weather, and then he doesn't play round 15 or 18 either.
Yeah, the break-even's low, so it makes people want to jump. But after seeing this little chance that he might not play, tells you he's not 100%. And usually when he's got a little niggle, he goes down at some point. And I think the fact he doesn't give you any buy coverage to that, the risks are just stacking on top of each other. So for someone like you, Barnesy, it's not ideal, but it's great because you've banked 2 tons. So it's not horrible. And if he continued to play like that, I think, obviously someone you just keep and hold and you play him each week and you'd be stoked. But this could also open the door if he doesn't play this week for Tracy to hold that fullback spot again, go back on the wing, which is fine. But I think the fullback is suiting him at the moment for his scoring. I think it doesn't make too much difference. And obviously,
if you're head to head, you just get him though at the price.
Because if he covered the next buy round, I'd go Setu 2 to him this week, no brainer. I think that'd be a pretty popular trade for upgrading too. But like I said, Taz gives me no coverage. Unfortunately, I can't get any guys that give me no coverage, because if I was getting a guy with no coverage, he's the guy I'd want. But like you just said, the injury scares the absolute crap out of me now, because if you're low on trades, you can't afford an injury, and he's got the kind of injury where he'll just be in, out until, he's out for 10 weeks, and then he's an immediate sell, another trade.
Well, Payne Haas is similar. Payne Haas is the next most popular guy in the top 3.
I can't get around this one either.
I don't... Look, I sort of get it in the sense that he is value when you have a look at it. He's only going to cost 653,000, 97 break even. He can get pretty close to that. He looked really good last week as well. Played the full 80 minutes against the Dragons for his 93 points, which is crazy. I was worried that he'd play 50 minutes and he comes out and bangs out an 80-minute game after he's been out for a couple of months. It was unexpected, but he is going to play Origin, Mikey. So when you look at that and the games that he's going to miss, and the fact that he's backing up from Origin with that AC joint, problem that he's had as well, I just don't love the minutes or this period. They've got a round 19 bye as well, so he's going to miss 18 and 19 both in a row.
And 16 as well. They've got a 16 mini bye as well.
So
a lot of buys coming.
He's playing half his games, and those games could be reduced minutes as well. And I think I tell you the other thing, the nail in his coffin as a buy for me, his front row forward's good now. So,
best we've had it since the good old Corey Parker, Paul Gallen days.
It really is. So, I mean, I don't think that he's such a necessity now, right now. And I'll be super controversial. I don't know if he's a necessity for the run home either. If you have, if you've got if Jackson Ford keeps going how he's going and you own him, and you bring in Terrel May this week, do you need Payne Haas? Because you can just run home with those guys that are going to score the same, right? So I know it's quite controversial. He'll probably, be one of the top front row forwards still. But if you've got the other guys that are going to score similar, does it really matter?
Oh, I'd want Payne Haas. I just think Broncos, they were at the same position they were last year with wins and losses. They lost to Manly, lost to Dragons. Everything's happened the same. So I guess the only difference is I think the competition's more fierce this year. If they are to come back, they're going to require someone like Payne Haas to continue to play these big minutes. If you can punch out these big minutes, all he needed to try on the weekend, 120. He's a guy you definitely want to grab. And look, by round 20, if you can get him around the 700k mark, I think it's pretty much a steal. But hopefully he doesn't rise too much from there. Look, I get why people are tempted. 653k with what this guy can do. It's tempting. And the fact he come back from that injury, played 80 minutes, tells you that he's ready. And he's going to another club next year. So I think, Madge will run him into the ground. He's going to have to, because they're well behind and they need him.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with any of that. I think this is the worst period to buy him.
You just can't buy him now. It makes
go near him, right?
Even for a head-to-head player, how many games out of it are you getting? Just wait.
So we're going to talk about another Latrell, but of the Seaworld variety, not the Mitchell variety. He is top 4 most popular, minus 84 break even, 201,000. So he's going to make money, and it is some buy cover as well. We know Latrell Mitchell's going to be out for a while, so you're going to get a couple of games, a couple of rises out of him. Most importantly, you're going to get a Broncos game at home, and that's going to be pretty big in round 15. And he could end up being a play that goes, 90 plus or something as a real low value guy. So I think all that's great, okay? But I've looked to get him in about 4 different times, and every time reminded myself, hang on, Barnesy, he's fullback and halfback only. It really sucks. If he was centre wing, he'd be such a good buy right now. But I cannot possibly give up a fullback or halfback slot at the moment for those big buy rounds or for anything before or after them, because I just think those points are too valuable. So it's a real pickle. I don't like trading out guys to him in those spots. I wish he was centre wing. I'm going to let him pass, but I understand people doing it, and he could be hugely valuable in his scoring and his money making the next few weeks.
If you were centre wing, you could do it, but at the position you can't. And the fact that they have a round 16 bye, that's one less game that he's not going to make money. They said Latrell's out for 4, probably goes back into the Origin arena, so you probably only get him for another 2. If he scores 30 or 40 this week, that 90 drops out of the rolling average. Yeah, he makes goes closer to 300k, but if he gets a crap score this week, the money goes out. So you've got that risk too. If the 90 and 60 were flipped it around, gives you a bit more courage. I think he's a good player. The Bunnies are attacking well. He's got the goal kicking, but that also just heightens the risk if you take centre wing. You can take a stab at centre wing because you've got all those extra spots. But
I'd love to do it at centre wing.
Yeah,
I think the other thing too is that you got to wait for ages, right? You got to just hold him at a fullback or halfback spot for months.
Well, you need to get the 2 rounds of coverage out of him. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
So, round 15, round 18 is a long way away. So you're not trading him until round 19 if you're getting him this week in round 14. That's a long time that you've got a fullback or halfback spot that you're not utilising on an elite top scoring player. And he might not even play all those games. So, yeah, it's a hard one. I lead towards no. I think there's other ways to make money and get coverage. But Kai Pearce-Paul, you mentioned, he's the 6th most popular player. I got him in last week. I never say must have, and I'm not going to here. I'm just going to say I think he's pretty close, pretty similar to Terrel May. Not as good as Terrel May, but he is a guy in a more troublesome second row forward position, which you identified earlier in the show. And you know that he's going to be a keeper for the rest of the year, and he's going to cover both bye rounds. The Tigers are a really quality side to target for your bye round coverage and for your Origin coverage because they're pretty much unaffected. They don't have a bye until round 23 again, and they've got really good matchups coming as well. Round 15 is a Gold Coast Titans matchup. Round 18 is a St. George Illawarra Dragons matchup. Those are the 2 target games, probably possibly top target games out of each of those big bye rounds.
And they're not going to be missing much. They won't be missing, like maybe Coruscant comes in on the bench potentially or into that 19-man just as a backup hooker. I think he will. But even then, they're not going to be missing too much more because you've got guys like Luai that aren't picked for Origin. So, absolute key guys to have. And I really want him. Like you said, I don't think he's a must-have, but at the price and what he's produced, I think he's pretty close. And you might go, oh, yeah, he's versing the Panthers this week. I can wait next week. Yes, you can, but he's running up against Blaze. And if you have a look at most weeks, Penrith aren't letting in too many tries, but the tries that are letting into it's nearly almost a right second row. Laban on the weekend, another one add to the list of it. Like it's not a bad sport to run at. So doesn't need a score either for it to score well. Like on the weekend, got a try assist for 75. But look, he's a guy I really want. My only issue is, like I said before, I've got to sell a guy. I don't really want to get him, but his coverage is. I think he's the best second rower moving forward with bye coverage, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's also like I don't mind getting him next week either, because Panthers is a harder matchup, but you just have to make sure that you've got him for next week, I think. He's averaging 77 for the year, Mikey, and he's only 14% owned. And one of the things that I like about him over May, even though May's a better player, is that not everybody's going to trade him in to get him to 40% ownership this week or even next week. He's going to remain at a reasonable owned level of probably around 17 or 18% this week, which is pretty good. And next week, other people have problems and stuff and they can't get him in. That can happen as well. I really like Pearce-Paul. I think he's having a great season. He's a great buy. The next guy that we're going to talk about is Jaden Campbell. Now, look, I have been on a Jaden Campbell train a few times and it has never got me home. It has always broken down and let me off at a stop way before I thought I was going to get off that train. He always gets hurt when I get him. It's happened maybe 3 times in the last 4 seasons. Every time I've gotten him, I'm burned. But at 600 odd K with his potential, I understand people going for Jaden Campbell. I guess, Mikey, we do have, like, we discussed it with Latrell Seawalt, but he is a halfback. So, I mean, I guess you're going to trade a Nicho Hynes or a Nathan Cleary to him. And that's an issue in itself. But he doesn't have the round 18 coverage, which I don't like. I do like him against the Broncos this week. I do think the Tigers matchup is okay for him in round 15. But I just don't think it's good enough to grab him. He's averaging 76 for this year, which I was surprised about. And he's actually been quite consistent. So we need to give him some praise because he's got a low of 40 and his next worst score is 55. He has already missed a couple of games this season already, but look, if he was any other position, I'd really want him. And I think that if you are going to sell a Nicho Hynes or a Cleary, I do think that Campbell is the one to go for at least.
I think he's the one you'd go for if you were selling one of those guys. The fact that he'll most likely pick up that jewel in round 18, that is what isn't as bad as getting him. Because, you know, you can, like, say Hynes is back for 18. You could hopefully then flip him down to 5'8" to then be able to grab Hynes back, and then you hold Campbell for the rest of the year. And you know he's got that ceiling in him. He's starting to run a bit more, which is good. Starting to bust a line because he wasn't have as many tackle busts in the start of the season. And he's a player that, you know, I've had a more successful train ride than what you have, Barnesy. But like I said, I'm just against selling those two guys. But yeah, if you are in the market for a halfback, I think Campbell's your man.
You could also wait until next week and hope that he does get that jewel and trade at 5'8" instead next week.
Yeah.
That's the option if that does get added. Dylan Lucas getting traded in quite a bit, 120 on the weekend. That was great. But look, here's the thing with the Knights. I'm happy to have a few of them. I wanted to make sure I had Knights for that Parramatta game. They play the Storm at Amy Park this week. Not great. And then they don't play round 15. So it's difficult. Dylan Lucas still has a 46 break even. I just think that you can wait till post round 15. They are going to play the round 18 big buy. They're not going to play 15. So you get the Storm away and nothing the next week. So I love Dylan Lucas as a buy, Mikey. I think the teams need to get on. But to me, the target date is round 16 versus those Dragons.
Yeah, the fact that 15 is their last by 2, I'm pretty sure. 18, 19.
No, round 27, but that doesn't affect head-to-heads.
That's what's so realistically he's great for head-to-heads and even for overall, unless you're like chasing top spot. But yeah, I think with the way he's playing, he's fringe if they need another second rower in Origin. I know Liam Martin could come back to fold, but I think he's a good chance at sneaking into that 19-man if injuries were to persist. So that's what would put me off selecting him now for this round.
Pods and Gems, the segment where we quickly mention a few players that haven't been in the top 10 traded in or out in Market Watch that are maybe being neglected. Now, a couple of controversial bunny calls. Koloamatangi is just over 500,000. He played 80 minutes in the second row last week, which I think was really encouraging because his minutes are obviously back up and he's healthy again. And he's now been moved to front row, which is where he scores better at, because David Fafita is back. And David Fafita himself is only mid-500s in price. And both of those guys are now going to give you pretty good buy cover, provided they don't get picked for Origin, obviously. Now, I don't think David Fafita is going to get picked for Origin. I tend to think that Koloamatangi probably won't, but he's a chance. The Rabbitohs play 15 and 18, and round 15, they are against the Broncos, which there'll be a depleted Broncos side, so I like that. Round 18, it's against a depleted Panthers side, not quite as good, but still okay. I am going to put my cards on the table, Mikey, and I want you to tell me what to do. I'm looking at downgrading to one of these guys to make my second trade to hit Herbie Farnworth to get Herbie back in because I sold him. So I'm wondering whether, Fafita's the guy that I want for the run home or whether it's Koloamatangi.
They're both pretty solid. See, I reckon if Fafita doesn't get in the orange side, he'll be a sneaky one because he was pretty highly owned before, and I think we just saw the other carnage. Some people might not, and if you don't have Kai Pearce, you'd probably go to Kai Pearce. So I don't know, Fafita barely scored any tries either. So if you think he's going to come back and have that
None. Hasn't
attack,
scored yet as a rabbit.
that's what I mean. Like if they go on a little bit of a charge, they're both good plays. You just know what you're paying. Would you want to go for the upside or do you want to go for the more considerable, the baseline guy? So especially if you're selling a guy like Twell, going Twell to like someone like Colomatungi, maybe closely it evens out. But both good buys, especially if you can cover that round 16 because they do have a buy.
Yeah, I think with Keon, like he's averaging 59. He averaged 68 last year, but that was actually more like a 75 if you looked at him like a front row forward. So, and the Rabbits do have quite a good run. They're only going to miss round 16 now, and the rest of the season they're playing. And they're playing several sides, like the Eels in round 17, which are pretty good matchups for them as well.
538 for Fafita is a steal too. Like that's a good price. But see, issue yet again, no second roller spots even look at guys like this. And I think a lot of people in the same boat. Second roller is pretty stacked if you've got some pods like Olaquatu and Duncan. It's harder to get all some of these guys in.
I'm going to throw out a couple of real Big Balls pod centre wing guys here.
I've got one for you if you're not going to say one, but you go first.
You'll have to see if we're thinking the same again.
Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned that the Tigers are good, right? I mentioned that they're going to be one of the supreme elite buy cover teams for round 15 and 18. I present to you an ex-Panther, Taruva.
I knew that.
He's averaging 59 for the year, which is an equal career high. He's never been hugely SuperCoach relevant. He just hasn't been able to put it together, Mikey. But at 436,000, can I tell you, he peaked this year at 700,000 in value, which was just in round 8. Round 8, he was worth 700 grand because he had scored a 155-point game against the Knights, and he scored a couple of other big ones as well with an 82, and he's got not many tries outside of those 2 games, which is unusual. Now, the draw opens up a bit for the Tigers again here. In round 15 and 18, they get the Titans and Dragons. If you're looking at a hand grenade, Big Balls pod in your centre wing to give you cover and potentially be able to trade out for maybe a couple $100 grand profit, I think Taruva could be it. The problem is that obviously he could easily average 40 over this period and just be mud. So you need to know that. But he's at a reasonable price, mate, and he's a few $100 grand almost below his peak this season on his price point as well.
Yeah, it's a sneaky play. Obviously, if you don't have too many Tigers in your centre wing, like if you got too many of them, then it's a bit hard to do so. I've got a couple of cheap ones, but yeah, I think I don't like the fact that he keeps moving from centre to wing. I prefer him on the wing just for the more score trying opportunities, and especially Maxine constantly being in and out. Like I could see maybe next week with Patrick Herbert coming back from suspension. If he goes back in, then you could see Taruva push back out to the wing, where I think I prefer him for SuperCoach. So there's just a lot of chess pieces with the Tigers. I just keep shuffling this back line around, and say they have a heavy defeat to the Panthers, that's going to change again.
Yeah, I again, another one that I'd rather wait till next week, but he's on my buy planning look for a downgrade pod if I need to. Tamale. I quite like some of the Raiders games, and Tamale hasn't quite lived up to expectations at 58 average. $500,000 almost on the nose. Reasonably cheap. Certainly, a bit of a discount on where he started the year. He hasn't been scoring great, Mikey, though. He's got a 100-point game against the Bulldogs back in round 3, followed by an 84-point game, and since then, he hasn't gone better than a 65. But he's got the Roosters the Roosters this week at home at GIO, and then he's got Parramatta in round 15. And I really like the fact that he's got that Parramatta game in round 15. Again, I think that the Raiders can put some points on the... Parramatta game, yeah. I think the Raiders can put some points on the Eels in round 15. They've also got the Dragons in round 17. So when you look at it, there's a pretty good opportunity for him over the next month to score a few tries. Doesn't play round 18, but if you're looking at cover and a couple of target matchups, particularly the Eels and the Dragons, 2 out of the next 4, he's just one of those hand grenades that I did look at as well for some cover and also potential 100-point score.
Yeah, he's not a bad one either, but the only difference is, like we said earlier, covers 1, not 2.
Yeah,
so that's why I'd prefer to take a stab with Taruva or the guy that you didn't mention that I have, that I prefer them, both of them, and who's a 50-50 chance I'm either going to get Kai Pearce-Paul or I grab this guy this week, and it's Karapani. 370k, he's very cheap. Look, that's what I was alluding to earlier. That's a very, very low floor, but hasn't been scoring like tries. Scored one on the weekend for 72. If he gets another good score against the Titans this week, that 22 goes out the rolling average, and all of a sudden, Karapani's going to start ticking. Might I add that he's dropped 252,000 in value. So realistically, we saw him start in the 600,000s. If the Broncos go on a comeback tear, and you believe they will, he's on the right spot. He's on the left wing. So Ezra Mam's been dropped. How does that affect him? Not 100% sure, but look how he's scoring his tries. Cut out pass by Reece Walsh. So if Reece Walsh misses that Origin side and stays in there, that makes him a more appealing option. Break even at 32, unless he has a double or a hat trick this week, he will have a pretty decent jump. But if you go a guy like Sedutu to Karapani, you're also netting 150k to, with minimal trades. If you can also net some money with it, it's good. The only catcher for me is, am I willing to hold him for the rest of the year? He's the kind of guy that you could have as a 6 center wing and play on matchup, 100%. But
he's just gone so badly. Like, he's got a 20, a 17, a 29, a 22.
He's rocks or diamonds, and he was the same last year. But if you caught him for this run that they went on, you struck gold. And that's what he's not a trade for the faint-hearted. He's a trade for, he's like, there's kind of like, he's a crazy trade. But at the price and the coverage in the main buy rounds, that's where he's got the 2 green ticks. But kick him into
I reckon the first 2, the South plays, are the gems, and the other ones are the pods, and they're massive pods that we've named. But it's the sort of things you got to look at and try and work out your coverage. Really quickly, we're not going to go through each game. We're going to talk about our top captaincy options and vice captaincy options for the round before we sign off. Look, I do think that when we're having a look at the Storm Knights game, even though the Storms have been playing better, if you own a Kalen Ponga, you could take a stab at that one for the VC. So he's certainly one of the early games. But Tedesco's the third game, and he's my number 1 VC option. I think the Teddy versus the Raiders is looking at a bounce back. So that's probably my top 2 VCs. And I think that with the Cs, we do have Reece Walsh obviously playing the Titans, but he really got bailed out last week. He looked like he was going to score 38 against the Dragons. And then you've got another guy that was a real disappointment last week, Drinkwater with a 27, playing back at home versus the Dolphins, who have been giving up a few points this year. So those are the guys that I kind of pointed out, Mikey. But, of course, we haven't even mentioned Nathan Cleary, who's playing the Tigers as well. So I think that it's a round where sport for choice, and I'm probably leaning towards a VC Teddy and a C Cleary myself. But I can see a bit of value in some of these other pod options.
Yeah, I like, if I had Tedesco still, that'd be what I'd be doing. I know you said before you don't think Terrel May can turn up. I think he can. I think this could be a close grudgy game, the Panthers-Tigers. Maybe, Cleary's ceiling might be. It just depends kind of what kind of game we get. He is coming back from a rest, which is great. But yeah, I don't hate the Terrel May for a bit of safety if you're unsure. But VC from my side, I'm currently looking at Drinkwater, but the one I have a touch ahead is I really like Folongo. I know the Knights are playing good footy, but it's at Amy Park. They got to win. He looked really great last week. 3 line breaks. He's looking good, and you add the fact that I think he'll probably kick goals again. Didn't kick him great on the weekend, but he's kicked goals in reserves. So the fact of that, I don't mind him as a sneaky VC. So there are a lot of great VC options this week, even some pod ones. But yeah, looks to be an interesting round. Like now that you're getting your players back, I think you'll start to notice that it's getting very hard to pick at 18. Like I'm leaving guys out.
My bench Munster's 97 on the weekend, so.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, luckily I didn't have enough players, so I couldn't worry about benching players. But Lasardi's...
I captain Drinkwater too, so...
Oh, ouch. He still scored more than me.
Still got close to 1,300 somehow.
Yeah.
It started off well, went really badly. But look, me and Mikey have gone almost an hour for everyone, which is more than we intended to do.
Always
so
happens.
We have to sign off, mate. But enjoy work tonight and enjoy SuperCoach this week. I hope it's kind to you. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks, Barnesy. Good luck to everyone's team this round, and get ready for the bye rounds to keep on chugging through.
Thanks very much for listening, guys and girls. Make sure that you do subscribe. We are on iTunes, Spotify, as well as YouTube. Subscribing and liking the podcast also helps us immensely. And also make sure that you jump on all the socials and follow us there as well, where you can get some updates and also some articles and stuff that I do for sporting news. And of course, remember our great sponsor, oneworldcourier.com.au. Good luck with the trades this week. Enjoy the full round of rugby league once again. I can't wait to talk all about it again next week.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine.